AOC, being one of the youngest, well-articulated, recognizable faces of the Democratic Party, losing the ranking member seat on the Oversight Committee to a 74-year-old with cancer, a man I couldn't even tell you what his name is, perfectly sums up the Democratic Party. The fact that Nancy Pelosi had her old, greedy-ass hands meddling in this situation to stop AOC from having that position only proves that the Democratic Party does not want to move forward, does not want to learn from any of their mistakes in this election and probably the last 3 elections.
Leave it to the Democrats to have something right there in their faces and then just screw it up. I'm talking about AOC losing to a 74-year-old with actual throat cancer to be the lead Democrat on the House Oversight Committee, due to the influence of Nancy Pelosi, who is literally in a hospital recovering from hip surgery. She wanted to tank it because it's this man's turn. Please, it's this man's turn to go home and retire.
The Democratic Party is a desiccated corporate husk that is completely out of step with the cadences of our time. This development is a calumny, a disgrace, an embarrassment. Because nobody in America, and we're talking ground level, nobody gives a fuck about what 74-year-old bag of bones Jerry Connolly has to say.
Folks, I'm not sure that National Democrats are up to the task right now. About an hour ago, House Democrats just decided to pick a 74-year-old member of Congress who is battling throat cancer to be the ranking minority member on the House Oversight Committee over AOC. AOC, who by all accounts is the best and most effective communicator that Democrats have. They've decided to put a 74-year-old with throat cancer in that ranking position instead of her.
Apparently, some Democrats are just not picking up the signal as to why they lost the 2024 election. They were too far left. They were too woke. They cared about a whole bunch of stuff that America was firmly against. Now, AOC, of course, is part of that far left-reaching squad, that group of young upstarts that was hand-selected because they were essentially leftists, because they were socialists, all right? But never mind any of that. She has lost her bid for the House Oversight Committee because at least Nancy Pelosi, as old and geriatric as she is, recognizes that the American people are not that far left. And as I've said many times in the past, I hope the Democrats do not figure this out because we want to keep winning and winning easily in the future. So what we're going to see today, of course, is the talking heads melting down about the same exact scenario. But before we get to these clips, please like and comment on this video so we can break through the algorithms. Here we go.
Why not have an AOC and a Jasmine Crockett who, quite frankly, are never scared? Never. Of Donald Trump or Republicans.
With regular people
Absolutely.
About regular things. I mean, AOC and Jasmine Crockett are probably two of their best communicators. And, you know, you have people that have the skills, but they're not pushing them forward.
That's right.
You know, Ayanna Pressley is one of your strongest communicators. Why isn't she pushed forward? Do you also feel that these women of color, these young women of color are getting set aside in a party that during this campaign, and this was Biden's team that Harris took on, refused to pay for the ground game. They didn't want to give LaTosha Brown and Black Voters Matter any money. They wanted to give it to these big, giant consulting firms run by mainly majority folks who made a lot of money and refused to put money on the ground to get young voters out.
Yeah, and that the consulting class tends to lean to, let's figure out the moderates, right? Let's go pick up some moderate
Convert
voters.
Republicans.
But the reality is, if we've seen the exit polling and conversations, even anecdotal conversations that I've had with folks, Black and brown voters didn't even get any mailers. There were some conversations that weren't even just they weren't even touched. No. And so to the point that you're making about AOC, Ayanna Pressley, Jasmine Crockett being a great messenger, you think about Donald Trump. He is a wonderful messenger. That's the credit that I'm going to give him. He knows how to use culture and reach people so he can distract them from what the administration is going to do. Yeah. We need messengers to make sure that people are paying attention to all these hearings on Capitol Hill, to communicate to voters. I don't agree with what Bernie Sanders said, that we've abandoned the working class people. No. We actually are the party of working class people.
And working class people are not all white.
And they're not all white. And actually, we have the policies for those people. Jasmine Crockett, Ayanna Pressley, AOC, the list goes on. Those women know how to communicate to those voters. That's why you saw so many AOC Trump voters, right? Yeah. She did that polling, and people want to be engaged.
They want authenticity.
Authenticity and feel as though their voices are heard. And those are the disruptive voices that I think the party needs to concede, retire, enjoy the rest of your life.
What is about this? This gerontocracy seems like it's intractable. And I recall that when President Obama was elected, he kind of pushed aside the DNC and created his own organization because I think there's a frustration with the sort of creaky way the DNC operates. Jamie, God bless him, couldn't really change it. But it is run by donors and consultants and people who are locked into the old ways of doing things. They want to advertise on TV. And look, I'm for TV. Okay, I love TV. We work on TV. But they don't want to do the sort of new world media, right? But that an AOC is so good at.
So here, of course, is Joy Reid doing what she do. It's all race baiting, right? You're not supporting AOC and the other squad members because they're people of color. So even that old DNC doesn't want to come out and give money to the up-and-comers, all right? But of course, what are they saying? They're making the exact wrong conclusions. AOC is a great communicator. She can come out and get the message out because in New York City, people voted for her and for Donald Trump, okay? That is only going to fly in blue states. People are not that far left in the rest of the country, as this election just showed, all right? So you can come out and say that, oh, AOC is the great communicator and we want her out there pushing the message, but it's a message the American people do not want.
Democratic Congressman Jerry Connolly of Virginia was elected by his caucus to be the ranking member of the House Oversight Committee. That's the highest ranking member of the minority party, the Democrats. Connolly, who is 74 and was just diagnosed with esophageal cancer, beat back a challenge from 35-year-old progressive Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez amid calls for a new generation of leadership in the Democratic Party. As Democrat Don Bayer of Virginia, a Connolly ally, put it, quote, "Jerry's a young 74, cancer notwithstanding." Now, to be clear, I'm sure Jerry Connolly will do a fine job as the ranking Democrat on oversight. I understand his colleagues respect him. I understand the way seniority works in Congress, which has been there forever. Often there's a reason for it. You learn a lot over the years. But in light of everything that has happened over the past decade, it does feel like Democrats still have not learned a pretty important lesson here. Back in 2013, when some liberals called for the retirement of Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg, then President Barack Obama invited Ginsburg, at the time an 80-year-old cancer survivor, to a now infamous lunch meeting. The president gently implied that it was time for her to pass the torch before the 2014 midterms, when Democrats were expected to lose the Senate, making it impossible to replace her with another ideological liberal on the court. Ginsburg refused to step aside.
You're 83. You're the oldest serving member on the Supreme Court. How long do you think you can do this?
At my age, you have to take it year by year. I know I'm okay this year. What will be next year? I'm hopeful, however, because my most senior colleague, the one who most recently retired, Justice John Paul Stevens, stepped down at age 90, so I have a way to go.
Republicans retook the Senate in 2014, and they held it until 2021. Ruth Bader Ginsburg died in September 2020 at the age of 87, 3 years after that interview and 7 years after her meeting with Obama. Donald Trump and the Republican Senate, just a few months before the election, replaced her with conservative Justice Amy Coney Barrett, further cementing conservative control of the court for generations to come and facilitating the end of Roe v. Wade. You would think that would have been enough for Democrats to start taking the age issue seriously, but it was not. In April of last year, President Joe Biden announced he was running for re-election, even though he was the oldest man to ever serve as president and was also clearly having a hard time communicating at the level necessary to occupy the bully pulpit. It wasn't until over a year later, when Biden gave a cataclysmic performance in his first debate with Donald Trump, that the Democrats changed course. After a wrenching, excruciating process just months out from the election, Biden, again, to his credit, finally stepped aside under enormous pressure. But he clearly didn't do so under the conditions, we can say in retrospect, that would have been best for Democrats to run a winning campaign. You would think that would have been enough for Democrats to start taking the age issue seriously. But it was not. Jerry Connolly won that vote today. And he did so thanks in part to former Speaker Nancy Pelosi whipping votes for him.
Okay, so yes, I do believe the country's leadership is far too old and we need a fresh generation, okay? But Nancy Pelosi, for all of her faults and how much I dislike her, is a pretty smart politician, okay? And she knows that AOC, as a far-left progressive, is not going to be a good fit at this point in time for the Democrat Party. So unfortunately, she's smart enough to see that, but she's not smart enough to step aside and let in that younger generation. But either way, I hope the Democrats keep making these same mistakes over and over and over again. Nobody wants AOC on a national national level. Nobody wants the far left progressivism in our government, as we've just seen a clear rejection of with the election of 2024. And no one wants, of course, these old geriatric people running the country. And although this may be a problem for both sides of the aisle, I know that the left is nowhere near solving this. So thank you for watching. Don't forget to like, share, comment, subscribe, and stay safe out there, people, because they're coming after you.